Let's get out to Seth Linden, president at Dukas Linden. Seth, thank you so much for joining us bright and early this morning. Look, Brexit has hit so many UK companies and multinationals like a freight train. From a public relations perspective, how have they fared?
Well, I don't think they have fared that well. And by the way, thank you for having me. The reality is that many companies baked in the fact that Brexit would not happen, and they have not well articulated their messages in terms of what they should be doing, what the impact is going to be to employees, what the impact is going to be to clients and investors, et cetera. So you essentially have this level of uncertainty and lack of vision that's still occurring. I think you would no doubt agree that throughout the UK and Europe, there's still this sort of wait-and-see approach. What will happen? What will happen in terms of the ultimate impact to day-to-day operations of many companies? That still hasn't been articulated. And I was actually in London the day before the vote, and it was very clear to me that companies had already figured, this will pass, it'll be close. But clearly, they missed the mark. And I think it's a broader lesson about making sure that you're always anticipating the worst-case scenario and really factoring in scenarios that don't seem realistic. And that wasn't the case here. And I think it's a good lesson. And we have to think about it here in the U.S. in terms of the elections coming up, no doubt.
Well, you make a very important point about transparency, but what if these corporates simply do not know what the effects of Brexit will be, or in the case of the U.S., what a Trump presidency or a Clinton presidency would mean? How can you prepare for that?
Well, obviously, there's no silver bullet. There's never a perfect way to anticipate any news, but a good corporation will sit down and actually go through the process of saying, what will this mean? Can we at least come up with sort of a lockbox, if you will, of statements and plans and ways of answering basic questions to clients and customers about how their business will operate given these different scenarios. I think right now it would be very important for a firm in UK and throughout Europe as well as in the US to be taking into account, for example, a Trump presidency or post-Brexit when we know more, and to actually go through the process of sitting down and saying, what will this mean? How do we articulate the worst case scenarios? And you really have to sit down and go through a very thoughtful process. And this does go to a broader point about every corporation right now today, given the world we live in, should be thinking not just about big events like this, but what if our CEO resigns? What if there is a situation where there's a data breach? What if there is a situation where there is suddenly a lawsuit or an act of malfeasance? Many large corporations don't take advantage of that, and it's something that they should be doing.
Sure. I mean, Seth, you are with us from a public relations perspective, that you're representing that side of business, because I would argue that the vast majority of people who come through our doors, that they're already doing this. I mean, are there things, big companies at least, I mean, I would be very surprised if big companies out there, if they're not considering, what happens if the CEO resigns, or what happens, some of the things that you've just mentioned. Are there things outside of these maybe quite obvious points that you think companies are ignoring?
Well, you raised a very key point, and it's really the fact that you would think that big companies would be doing this. But I can tell you, we work at the Fortune 500 level. We work with large private equity firms, hedge funds, professional services firms, and many companies have not really taken the step or the time to think through these basic scenarios. Yes, they have plans, but they need to really be dusted off a shelf, and companies do not spend enough time doing this. And I will tell you that at the large corporate level, companies constantly are surprised by events and are running light speed, and that's why they bring in firms like ours to help them. And I think really Q4 in 2017 is an opportunity to change that a little bit and to bring in some outside counsel. And here's a good test for I would say, the next time you're sitting down with the CEO. Ask them before that you go on camera, tell me a little bit about your firm. And what you will find, even at the large corporate level, is many CEOs and key portfolio managers can't articulate that basic question. And that gives you a sense of how they think about their firm, where they're almost too much in the weeds. And at the same rate, they're not thinking about the broader implications of what will happen to their organization. And I think Brexit was a little bit of proof in the pudding, if you will.
Seth, thank you very much for getting up so early to be with us. We appreciate it. Seth Linden, president at Dukas Linden.